everybody. I got with me, once again, another very special guest. Everybody, welcome to the show, Charlie Stickney. Welcome, Charlie.
Hey, thank you. Really appreciate being here.
Thanks for taking the time. How's life right now? Let's start there.
Well, I have to say, I feel like we've just gone through a crazy 15 to 18 months, depending on when your craziness started. And, we're slowly coming out of that, knock on wood that we're getting there. So, at least for me, things are pretty good, with the exception of yesterday when the internet went out for my entire block. But also the cell phone service went out. So it was, 14 hours of no cell service or internet. And I have 2 children. So the fact that I'm still alive and here to talk to you, it's a good thing.
Yeah, the kids not being able to use Fortnite for a few days can be dangerous. I know from experience as well.
Yeah, I am just happy that the internet went out at like 7:50 in the morning, as opposed to like 6:50 in the morning or 5:50 in the morning, because then the day would have been much worse. Because at least I had that quiet period to get the day started. So
I had recently, I don't know exactly where you are, but I'm in upstate New York, and when we were coming out of winter, so 2 weeks ago, but it was actually last month, we had this perfect storm of all of the snow melting. It was kind of rainy, and then we had this big windstorm come through, like 60, 70-mile winds, and literally like 4 houses down from me, electric poles just fell over, and we went like 2 days without internet, power, anything.
The dark ages.
It was nuts.
The dark ages.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with myself. Thankfully, I have a lot of comics to read.
Yes.
But speaking of that, Charlie, let's start here. Introduce yourself to the people out there. Who are you? What do you do?
So I'm Charlie Stickney. I am a writer, creator. I'm also co-publisher over at Scout Comics. And so I write my own series, but I also help empower other creators to get their vision out into the world.
What's your original series that you write for them?
So I write right now. I'm writing a series called White Ash. We released the first arc of that last year. We had a one-shot called Galarian, which was a spin-off from White Ash that came out earlier this year. White Ash, the trade is coming out in August, and then we're starting season 2 of White Ash in November. And so that's a series that's probably going to continue for about 60 issues. So it is a long, ongoing series that, as publisher, I get to make happen, which is it's a nice position to be in. But I also try to make sure that other creators, if they want to try something that ambitious, they can too. I also have another series called The Game that Scout is going to be putting out sometime next year, and we're also going to be doing a full Galarian miniseries, which is a White Ash prequel miniseries that will be coming out. And then I write another comic book called The Adept that's out with Immortal Studios.
So let's stick with White Ash for right now. You said it's a big ongoing 60-plus issue thing. Are you publishing it as issue 1 through 60, or are you guys splitting it up into miniseries to do kind of the seasons model?
We are doing the seasons model, but it will be having some legacy numbering on the inside. Because as the company grows, I think one of the reasons that you see a lot of companies go with the the seasons, like Arc 1, Arc 2, even like something like Jupiter's Legacy did that, at Image. It's about sales and trying to sustain enough momentum to pay for the title. And when you start with a new number 1, you can, in a sense, bring in new readers and hopefully relaunch interest in the series. But for White Ash, I would like it to be something that you see issue 45 of, issue 50 of. So while the second arc will be starting with a number 1, I think down the road you're going to see larger numbers on the book. That's my goal anyway.
So when you say legacy numbering, are you doing something similar to like what Marvel is doing, where it's like new Captain America number 1, but it's legacy number 600 and whatever?
We're still figuring out exactly
the
permutations of that and how we're going to do it. But I do think that for readers of the comic, they will also know that this, in a sense, is number 7. But for new readers coming in, it's the way I write anyway. Each arc is a good jumping on point, so it's designed to be a number 1, but it's also continuing the story.
Okay.
Which I think
So,
anyone who's doing a longer series wants. I think that's one of the problems with comics, because the longer they go, the harder it becomes for them to be accessible to new readers. And I want to continue the story in the world that I'm building, but I also want to make natural jumping on points for people as they come, so they don't feel completely lost. So this first issue will be a good orientation point for new readers, but it's also going to continue the story going forward.
yeah, that's always, for publishers in particular, the battle that I see of, like, I personally, as someone who's been reading comics for, I don't know, 15 plus years now, I love legacy numbers. I think they're great. And when I started, there wasn't really as much jumping on points in terms of there being a new number 1. But I could see where I know people were like, what should I read? And I'll say, well, X is good or Y is good, and you should check those out. And then they look at it, it's like, well, why would I jump on something at 322?
Right. But even something more recent like Saga, which has 50 or 60 issues, that might seem daunting to a new reader. And the way the story has been structured, it's just one continuous stream, right? Like this new season, per se, of White Ash starts with a whole bit about it's been 2 months. And it gives you a quick catching up as to what the characters have been doing that serves as also an introduction to each character in the world. So if you were new and you just pick up that issue, you get a sense of what's going on. But if you had read the first arc, you're like, oh, this is what's been happening over the last 2 months to the character, and now we're going forward with a new story. So I think if you're a writer and you plan for that ahead of time, you can find innovative ways that serve both purposes. To bring in new readers, but also to make the people feel like who've been reading it since the beginning that it's still the same story and it's continuing on.
So I guess we should rewind a little bit. What is the breakdown? What is White Ash? The story, the world.
White Ash, like the quick pitch I like to say, is it's Romeo and Juliet meets Lord of the Rings in rural Pennsylvania. Or the other pitch I like to use is, imagine if the guys from Supernatural got stuck in Riverdale, but rather than battling demons from hell, they had to deal with the worst of Mordor. It's grounded fantasy. It's set in a coal mining town about a young guy who he comes from a family of coal miners, and he can't wait to not be a coal miner. He's like, "Hey, Dad, bye. I'm going off to college." But on the day he's about to leave town, there's an accident at the coal mine, and he gets sucked in and finds out nothing about his life, or this town of White Ash is what he thought it was. And that's where those fantasy elements start to come in, as he finds out who he really is, what his family's legacy is, what the legacy of the town is. And we start building this big, epic, grounded fantasy tale set in a small rural part of Pennsylvania.
And who's your creative team for? Like, who else is working on the book? The artists and whatnot.
I'm really fortunate. I work with Connor Hughes, who I like to say is the greatest artist that no one knows. He is an amazing storyteller, and he's a guy who went to the School of Visual Design. And as he was leaving there, he had that thing inside him and said, "I don't know, are comics a real job?" So he went and found a real job, becoming the in-house graphic designer for the UN. A phenomenally talented person. So he does that for a while, and then his wife's got a job at teaching as an art teacher, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to take a shot on doing comics. And so he enters Mark Millar's first Millar World talent search. I don't know if you remember that a few years back. And he wins right off the bat. He's one of the pencilers chosen for the first inaugural issue. And he gets paired up with a colorist who's a good colorist, but was not good for him. And the stuff doesn't. And then so nothing happened. And he's like, you know what, maybe I should just keep doing stuff at the UN. But then he finds this ad I put online, and I find him. And I also come from, before I did comics, I worked in the entertainment industry. I worked in animation for years. And so for me, I'm working, doing an artist search. I'm working with one of my best friends who is a storyboard director who's worked on things like Hellboy, Tron Legacy, Bob's Burgers, King of the Hill, like everything. He's a phenomenal artist himself. And we're looking through all these submissions, and we come across Connor, and he's like, "Who is this guy? Oh my God, you got to be working with him." I was like, I don't know. And so, we started having a rapport, and it's just been magic since the beginning. I think when you work with an artist, as a writer, what you're looking for is someone who can build the visual world as much as you've done on the page, writing. And that's what Connor does. And so we go back and forth, and he pluses everything I write. He understands the nuance and the beats of the story I'm trying to tell, and then he'll bring something in the visual background that will then inspire some more offshoots of the story. So it's been an amazing partnership. And then Finn Cram is a colorist out of Scotland who just hits every note perfectly with Connor on this book. So Connor is the main artist that I've been working with on the Galarian miniseries. I'm working with the amazing Romana Mornelli, who's an Italian artist, and she's great too. And then on the Adept, which is another book I do, I work with Yishan Lee, who's also great, and who's done Swing at Top Cow, and she worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and a bunch of other things as well. She's just phenomenal.
Yeah, when going through White Ash, the first trade, I was struck immediately because Connor not only there's a lot of great artists out there who can, as I put it kind of derogatorily, can paint a pretty picture. But what Connor does that is really important for comics is he understands the scene. He understands the acting between the characters, which really struck me right away as I was reading it. Because you could tell that the dude has put thought into each panel and each scene.
Yeah, he puts so much in. Sometimes I'm like, hey, the first 3 iterations of the layout you did for this were all good. And then it's like, because he wants everything to be perfect. And the book has gotten better as it's gone along. You can even see like the art from the first issue to the second issue to the third issue. By the fourth issue, there's a funeral scene with a spread that's just jaw dropping that he did later on, and as he got into the world and understood White Ash better, it just the evolution of his art has been incredible to watch. And again, like if he wants to do detailed illustration, he can. Like the cover to the White Ash trade is just this beautiful double-page spread, almost fully painted looking thing. But his style is a little bit more. I don't want to say it's like Archie comics, but it's a little bit more simplified in terms of what he draws. But what he concentrates on, again, is the storytelling. It's the characters, it's the posing, it's the emotion of the scene, which as a writer, you can get swayed by these pretty pictures and these people who can do incredible pinups. But if they can't tell the story, it's not going to serve your vision. And together we create this series together. He's the co-creator on White Ash, and I wouldn't be able to do it without him.
Yeah, which I think is important to all the artists out there that may be listening. Like, how you set up your scene is way more important than the actual detail of the image. And I mean that in a way of, like you said, I've seen tons and tons of artists that can do a great pinup, can draw a pretty picture, but when you get them into sequential art telling a story, they fall apart because they know how to draw a face one way, or they know how to pose a person, 2 ways, and they don't get into those intricacies of each panel, which I was a little blown away with when I got that issue with how well he handled each panel.
Like I said, he spends so much time, contemplating what's the best shot. And I even talked to him as a partner, almost like an art director in some other books. I'm like, like he'll look at the layouts and he'll like, okay, so this is good, this is good, this is good, but what if, it's and then he'll talk about the nuance of the moment, and what in his mind it should be getting across, and and through having these conversations with him, I learn as a writer what I need more to put in my scripts to convey these things, because it's like the scripting form for comics is so different than anything else. And if someone's getting into being a writer in comic, you have to understand that. Like it's a letter between you and your artist, and the script has to work for the artist you're working with. And depending on who that person is, they need more detail, they need more direction, or they need less. And the great thing about working with Connor is he just gets. I can imply he'll take my information that I'm making and he'll turn it into something that hits the note I wanted without me having to write 8 lines telling him exactly where the camera is.
So when you're planning out a book like White Ash, you're the co-publisher of Scout, and you're helping create this book. How is it just a given that it's going to get published, or do you go through some sort of process with your other co-publishers to discuss
I don't
it?
Think,
or
I'd like to think
moving
that
forward,
nothing is a given to get published if it's not going to be good, right? So from starting from that place. If there's a place for it in the market, it will be published. If people are buying it, if it feels like a good product that represents the brand of Scout, we're going to put it out. And it's the same thing with another creator who brings a series to us. If they bring a series to us and it's a 6-issue miniseries, and by the time we get to issue 3, it's not selling, but Scout believes in it, we're still going to put out those last couple of issues. We'll make sure that series is finished out. We're not the company that is going to take a creator's work and put out 3 and see how the market does and be like, yeah, sorry, it's not doing well. If we believe in something, we believe in something. That said, if I'm bringing a new series to Scout, if there's something else that I wanted to do, it would be a discussion. It would be a discussion with the partners at the company whether we think that this fits the brand of Scout. As having the role of co-publisher, I think there's a certain responsibility that I should bring everything to Scout first. I wouldn't want to say, be hitting up Aftershock or hitting up Boom and saying, hey, do you guys want to put this book out? Because, I believe in the company that I'm a part of. So I do think there's a little bit of Scout believes in me and I believe in Scout. So for the foreseeable future, I see Scout being the place that I put all my books at. And with the expectations that Scout probably will want to. But again, if something isn't the right branding, or if it's not reaching a quality, if it doesn't have the quality of what I would consider Scout quality, then I wouldn't put it out myself.
So let's veer over to Scout then. How do you see the future of Scout in the coming years? I know you guys have made some changes. You did some cool things for shops during COVID. I know that you are working with Lunar now and a few other things. What can we expect from Scout, both business and creative-wise, in the coming years?
The industry in general is in a stage of transition right now. The distribution deals, in terms of how stores get their books from companies, has been changing on a regular basis. You have Kickstarter to work in, so I think from a publisher's perspective, you have to be nimble. You have to be adjusting to where the market is for comics, and I think that's something that's changing a lot right now in terms of how people get their comics, where they want to get them, and so I think that's something that if I want to just use the term. Scouting, I think that we've been very good at, is scouting a path forward for the industry. I think you had David Byrne, who's my co-publisher, on a couple of weeks ago, and I think he might have mentioned that we were the first publisher to join Lunar after DC. So we're distributed through Diamond, we're distributed through DC. We're also distributed, we self-distribute. We are talking to other people as well. If we want to find as many different ways to get our books into the hands of readers. So we're always looking for the next opportunity, and I think we're at a size as a company where we're able to do that. I think some companies have trouble kind of pivoting, but we've been really good at that in the last year and a half, and figuring out new paths forward. So I think you're going to see more of that from Scout, kind of just pushing the boundaries of how we get you comics, of how we interact with both retailers and customers, and there's been a lot of growth. Since the beginning of 2021, if you look at like books on shelves, we've been a top 10 publisher in terms of putting titles out in the direct market. And a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I don't know if we would say we were a top 25 publisher in that regard. So we've had tremendous growth. So I think success builds on success, and I see Scout becoming a more permanent fixture in the marketplace, and because of the way we've been built internally, we're very fiscally solvent, and we have a strong base that we're not overextending ourselves. We're not trying to do too much at once. We want to make sure that whatever we offer to customers or to retailers that we can deliver on. So, we've been very much within our means, expanding within our means, but we've been expanding constantly. So I'm very bullish on the future of the company. And then from a creator's perspective, the quality of the books that we've been putting out over the last year and a half has also been increasing. Hopefully, we've been developing a very loyal following, but I'm looking for more awareness of that in the industry in general. Like a book we did recently called Yasmin. I thought it was kind of criminal that it didn't get an Eisner. It was a fantastic book. Canopus, which was another book that we did that I just thought was just fabulous. And I don't think these books are getting enough critical admiration from comics in general. Like in some small circles they are, and that they're good. And I think going forward we're looking to have more of those books that kind of move the needle critically, and also the ones that move the needle in terms of sales. So I think you need to have a balance of both, and we're looking to have that as a company.
How do you see trying to get those critics to really pay attention? Because it seems like when I go on to, let's say, mainstream comics website, you get like Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, like the ones we all know and love, and then like nothing else. I don't see a ton of a Scout or Behemoth or any of these other.
Sure, I think it comes down to
smaller publishers.
The success that these companies, the ones you just mentioned, Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, and in Boom lately, have had beyond the comic space. So the fact that people who have never read a Marvel comic know who Spider-Man is, or who know that The Walking Dead was based in a comic book, right? Like these are things that bring in outside eyes to those companies. Yep. Because these websites, in general, don't want to traffic in just people who read comics. They want to traffic in pop culture. So at the point when Scout gets a TV show on the air or a movie in the theaters, that's the point when I think we start getting more of the mainstream press, which then leads to recognition by the critical press as well, because they become more aware. I mean, it's the same thing like when you look at like an Oscar campaign. An unknown movie, unless it has doesn't matter how good it is, unless it has a big marketing push behind it, or it's from a company like back in the day, Miramax. Miramax was known for putting out Oscar bait, right? And so it didn't matter who the creators were. If Miramax was putting it out, the critics were going to look at it. So it's that kind of thing where you need to have some success to have more success. And so, again, we're not trying to overextend ourselves. We don't want to spend money on a crazy marketing campaign to get reviews. We want to spend our money to make sure the creators who are at the company are supported, to make sure that the books are selling well, and that growth is in a curve that makes sense for the infrastructure that we have as a company to support it. But going forward, I think it's one of those slow and steady wins the race, and we're moving a little bit quicker now than we were, say, a year ago towards that finish line. But I think in terms of branding, I would not be surprised if a year down the road people are like, oh, it's Marvel, DC. After those, it's Image, Dark Horse, it's IDW, it's Boom, it's Vault, it's Scout. I kind of feel us being in that category probably in about a year.
Yeah, and I've watched where some of these upstarts, and not that you're really an upstart, but what I refer to as a smaller publisher are starting to get a little bit of recognition. And you mentioned Vault, and that's the big one for me. Like Vault, in my eyes, came out of nowhere. When I actually looked into it, they've been around, and it was
Right,
yeah, it was
and
the
but
right book at the
in
right
fairness,
time,
Vault
basically,
also had
and
a
then
TV
just
show,
built from there.
right? And and it was after that TV show was on the air, people started paying a little
Yeah,
bit more attention to them. I think so. You look at that, and Scout's been around for 5 years now, so we're not a newcomer. But in terms of the current incarnation that's getting books on shelves, that people are starting to know, that's been the last year and a half. Like that's when that growth has really started, where people can name titles of a Scout book. And I think that's from what does Scout do? Oh, they do. They did It Eats What Feeds It. They did Grit. They did The Recount. Like people know some of these titles. And when people start knowing Black Cotton, By the Horns, like when Steak, when they know those titles and they can identify them with a company, that's when the retailers start ordering more because they did that one. It sold like this in my store. If the retailers don't know your books, it makes it hard for the customers to know your books because they're not going to order.
yeah. So, and then as a company, how do you juggle, or is this even a factor for you? Being like republishing Kickstarter
So
or
I
Indiegogo
think at the end of
books
the day, I
as
would never
opposed
say
to
we
original
we
submissions.
republish because like I also come from a Kickstarter background. What we try to do is we try to bring some of those books to a larger audience,
Okay.
but we also try to make them new. In the sense that there's new pages, there's new content added to some of those books, so it's something different than that was on Kickstarter. So in a sense, it's a first print of that version. But I think so that's an important distinction. But for me, as a publisher, it's the same thing as you have to kind of look at each marketplace as its own entity. The way like there's different markets for films. Like there's the overseas market. There's the domestic market, which is the U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
Mhm.
You have the European market. You have the Asian market, and like in each of those is its own thing from a sales perspective. And I think there are people who read comics on Kickstarter. There are people who read comics in the direct market. There's not a high percentage of overlap. And even when you look at a book on Kickstarter that did really well, usually you're talking 1,000 to 1,500 people. If you go to the direct market, you're hoping to do 3,000 to 5,000 people. So the attrition from that is not going to be too small. You might lose 500 people or 300 people from that big hit book on Kickstarter. If it's not a big hit book on Kickstarter, if it was only 300 people, like that's not going to, it's not going to affect your sales in any tangible way. So it's not going to affect the sales of the retailer. And what we're doing is the creator was able to, fund their production costs through Kickstarter. So when we put the book out, they're making profit. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to make profit to the creator. We're introducing their work to a whole new marketplace that's never seen it before. And the retailers are getting something that they can sell that's a first print. So in a sense, it becomes win-win for everyone. We're able to get content to the retailers get something they can sell, and the creator gets more money.
Okay. And for all those creators, is everything under your belt is
Yeah, it's
considered
100%
creator-owned,
creator
where
owned.
they still own
Scout
the
never
property and
takes
can do what they
an
want with
ownership
it?
share of the property. Yeah. So at the end of the day, when we'll have the rights to do certain things with it for a defined period of time, but when that time period is up, you're free to take it someplace else, do something else with it. And also, in that regard, creators always have the last say over anything. So even if we brought a creator a multi-million-dollar TV deal, the creator could say, "Nah, I don't like that company because I did not like the way Lost did. So I don't want them to do my work." And even if they're throwing away $100 million, we can't do anything about it. It's a creator-owned company. If they want to stomp their feet about that, they can.
Interesting. So for people out there, I mean, what is your submission process? Are you just do you have a stack of submissions behind you somewhere?
We have a submission board.
How do you handle all that?
If you go to scoutcomics.com, there's actually a tab for submissions, which tells you all the requirements and things that we're looking for. And so we get stuff from people all the time. I mean, to be completely honest, you can often tell very quickly into a submission whether it's anything you'd want to consider. I think some people will approach things from a writing perspective or an art perspective. My general way I look at submission is I read the log line, and then I quickly scan through the book and see if the art is of publishing quality. If it is, and I like the log line, then I'll go back and read it. But if the art's not even there, there's no point in me personally investing too much time in reading the submission because the art has to be at a certain level. It's the writing that's going to determine whether the book goes or not, and the concept. But the art's what gets someone in the door. It has to be of publishable quality. But that said, like I'll probably look at anywhere between 7 and 20 submissions a week that we get in. But again, like it doesn't often take that too.
Patient man.
You can also like click through 3 pages and be like, oh my god, I want to do this book. What a great hook! I can't wait to do this. And then you'll file that one away and you'll read it all the way through just to make sure that there are no bumps. But you can generally tell pretty quick if it's something that's good or something that fits what you're looking to do. And that's not to say I think people should submit to as many companies that are taking submissions because every company's looking for something different. It's like even when you're just applying to colleges, if you were to apply to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, one of them might say yes and the others say no, or 4 of them could say yes and one of them could say no, and it has nothing to do with your qualifications as an applicant. It's just about what that company's looking for at that moment.
So when you're looking for submissions, are you looking for a full first issue or a full first chapter of something so that you can, assuming you like the tag, you like the art, and you go back, you can actually see how they complete an arc in an issue, or
art, a cover, a synopsis of this, and then like a pitch synopsis of the series, so we get a sense of what it's like. If sometimes we'll ask the writer for a script because I think it's unfair to ask a creator who's pitching, especially if they funded it out of their pocket, to see the finished thing before we decide whether or not to do it. But if there's no script written for the book and we're not sure, then it's really hard to judge. And as a writer myself, I think it's important to write the full script for a first issue anyway. So I don't think as a publisher it's too much of an ask to read the script for the first issue. And if someone's asking you for more, it means they're interested. So you should be excited to get that to them. We rarely ask for more. We never ask for more if we're not interested, thinking about possibly picking up a book. And I think that's probably the same thing for any publisher or anybody. No one asks you for more stuff if they don't like you.
And so let's go into the near future here. I saw that I don't know if you were there, but your co-publisher was at a con recently. Are you guys starting to feel open to getting out there and trying the con circuit again? How are you guys feeling about the current state of affairs, especially with that?
David, the co-publisher, he's down in Florida, where the regulations are a little bit more wild and free. So to speak. So, I think Florida cons have been up and running for a while, and that's also where Scout HQ is out of. I know that there are conventions that are on the schedule, and I think if people are vaccinated and they feel comfortable going back to the convention, I am personally not opposed to that. Right now, I'm planning to be at LA Comic-Con, but that's in December. There's a convention I might possibly do that's in September. But the bulk of the conventions that I've signed up for at this point are early next year and next year. And then that's partially because there aren't a lot of big conventions that happen. Everything kind of pushed. But that whole process is rolling out. I'll probably go and be part of a signing for Free Comic Book Day. So that'll be an event here. I'm out in Los Angeles, so there'll be an outdoor event that I'll be able to be part of. But too hot. And White Ashes Scouts Free Comic Book Day time as well. So it's a good thing for me. We didn't do one the last time.
Have you guys done a Free Comic Book Day issue before?
With Free Comic Book Day, there's actually a submission process where you as publishers have to submit because they don't want to overwhelm the stores with every single publisher out there, because there are 100, 150 publishers that are in the Diamond catalog. And the stores do have to pay for these free comic books. It might be 25 cents, but the way the program works is each store has to buy a certain allotment of a certain tier. So if there's too many books there, it becomes overwhelming for the shop to be able to do financially. There is a submission process, and it's based on who you are as a publisher, whether you're deemed a publisher that's worthy of being included, and also the content that you're putting forward. So.
Yeah, and I've seen, because my retailer around here, he gets just about everything.
Well, I don't know your particular retailer, but I know Pulp 716, which is up near Niagara Falls. I don't know if you've ever been to that shop. That they are big Scout fans, and they will be having a lot of White Ash stuff going forward. So. We do, yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, do you guys publish Stabbity Bunny, right? Yes, okay. So, my retailer was a big fan of that. When that came out, he was just like, this looks awesome, Stabbity Bunny, we got it, and we all bought that, and we're getting into that
you can actually get. I think with a lot of independent comics, one of the main things that kills momentum is if you're not coming out on a regular basis. I think Stabbity Bunny is a great book, but there was the artist was taking a little bit longer to get some of the issues done, and then all of a sudden there was 2 months between a sale and 3 months. That's another book I'm looking forward to coming back with another arc of, and really trying to give a big push behind it with the new audience that we've built, because I think it's a great series, and Richard Rivera, who writes it, is just a great guy.
So let's circle back around.
Trade comes out in August, right around the same time.
White Ash, you have the trade coming out soon. Is that
version
correct?
of White Ash comes out, and then the season 2 comes out in November. We're going to have a variant cover by I can't say who it is yet, but it's a very big artist. So I'm excited about that as well as part of push for that. And there's also going to be a White Ash magazine. It's coming out next month, which, and Scout does these magazines, which are basically like oversized versions of some of the comics we've already put out as a good, so it's the first 2 issues of White Ash, just to give people a teaser. So if you want to check out what the series is about, that's coming out next month. So you can look at that instead of just getting the trade. You could see that, see if it's something that you want to dip your toes into the waters of White Ash.
It's really cool. And I said this to Charlie when we had him on. For me personally, Scout, during the bulk of the lockdowns, when you guys did that program, buy some Scout comics, put your local retailer in the title, and we'll send something to them to help them out. That alone got me to support Scout forever, because I love the idea that we were all shut down there for a month, and some longer, some less, I understand, but there was really that time, and you guys pushed something to help out these retailers. They're so important to our industry, and I just want to say thank you for that.
And whatever we can do to be a good partner in that ecosystem, we're looking to. We have a lot of dialogue with retailers to see how we can do better, how we can be a better partner, what they're looking for, and what Scout can do. And then it's again about making decisions based on our size and infrastructure to make sure we deliver on something. Because I think the worst thing a publisher can do is promise something and not deliver. And so for us, that's where we always start from. We want to help. What can we do that we can actually do to both grow our place in the industry, but also grow the relationship with you?
So
Sure.
that's a great place to end it. Charlie, tell the people out there, what is a great place to follow you online if they want to see what you're doing next?
Charlie Stickney was taken. I didn't want to fight the guy for it. So, come follow me at Charles Stickney at Twitter. And then if you can't find me there, you can always email the Scout store and they can put you in touch with me.
Awesome. And everybody, I'll have the links down below to Scout's website, as well as the
White Ash is currently
I'm sorry,
in previews right now.
fumbling my words right now.
So
has White Ash, the trade, been in previews
they can order
yet?
it probably through Diamond for another week or two.
Okay, so I will have.
It'll be available through Lunar for another month or so. So if your retailer wants to be able to order it for you, they can. It's also the first book that we're releasing through Simon & Schuster. And, I always push people to order local through their shops, but it is also on Amazon and many other places as a pre-order.
Yeah, so I'll have that link to the previews page as well, because hopefully everybody out there is using the pull box system, because it's awesome. And you can just go on there and click it and say, I want my shop to order this, and then they will know. You don't have to talk to anybody anymore. It's
no
a wonderful world we live in.
Yeah, anytime. Just let me know.
So, Charlie, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you soon.